Let's talk about arrogance. Now, most of us by this point in our lives have had the experience of at least witnessing, if not interacting with and engaging with a human peacock. That's right, a human peacock. I'm not talking about NBC, I'm talking about the real deal. The individual who needs to spread their tail in order for us to admire them. The individual who needs to show their greatness, the individual who needs to show that they're better than everybody around them in order for them to feel valid. We have all at least had one experience with this type of individual, and I am here to confirm that your suspicions are true, which are that is not confidence. That, my friends, is insecurity wrapped in the facade of confidence. Now, I'm not going to lie. I found myself in two spaces when I was extremely insecure, right? When I believed that I was not worthy, that I was not adequate, that I could not be loved for who I was, but instead what I did or how I demonstrated myself to the world. When I was in that space, I teetered between two spaces. One was hiding from the world completely, and the other was peacocking, right? I might have been that peacock that you met. I was the person who was showing this facade to the world, who was showing this bravado, who was showing the sense of competence, right, and accomplishments to the world in order for them to accept me. And when I was in that space, I wish I could tell you that I genuinely believed in what I was displaying to the world. I genuinely believed in what I was showing to the rest of society. But in reality, I was most afraid in those moments. Now, there's an example of this kind of idea that I got recently from a book called The Six Pillars of Self-Esteem. Make sure you get your hands on that fantastic book, or you can get the audio version, etc. Anyway, the author spoke of how there was this dictator who obviously was feared by everybody since he used fear tactics as a way to get people to kind of reign under his control. And he would walk into these rooms infuriated, angry, frustrated because the people were not loving him or submitting to him in love. And he would literally be yelling in a rage, like, I don't want you to fear me. I want you to love me. Like, imagine that, right? A dictator, Stalin, Hitler, telling his constituents that he wants them to love him. Why don't they just love him instead of fearing him when he's operating from that space of wanting to control and wanting to be feared? Well, that individual is not a truly powerful person. It may seem that way on the external, but in reality, they are the most afraid, which means they're the least in control. And you probably know this from your own life. When you're trying to control every situation and circumstance, when you're trying to control your extremities or the outer world, the more that you're trying to control everything that's happening around you, the more insecure that you're feeling at that very moment in time. So when you witness this arrogance, when you witness this cockiness or this put on bravado, right, this false sense of confidence, the reason why we feel that something is off in most cases, right, the reason why we feel like this ain't really sitting right with me is because we're smelling out the true version of that individual or the true emotional set point of that person, which is insecurity. And so the reason why I believe this matters is because when most of us are taking this leap from insecurity into a space of inner security, right? When we're going from a place of inadequacy and unworthiness to worthiness, when we're going from a place of self-hatred to self-love, when we're making those transitions, sometimes we can catch ourselves in a false sense of bravado, right? Like myself, I was looking to become confident. I knew that there had to be more than this feeling of inadequacy and hiding from the world. There had to be more than that. There had to be more. And when I stepped into the personal development, self-help world, at least on the surface level, right before I got deeper into the shadow work and things of that nature, I believe that if I just became competent enough, or if I grinded till my teeth, were refined to a fine powder, if I didn't sleep and instead chose to work and work and work and work, if I continued to hone in on this personality of this ultimate grinder, then I would feel adequate. Then I would feel confident. And logic would say, or reasoning would say, well, that sounds about right. If you are competent in something, a competent in a skill or in certain ways of being, then of course you will be confident, right? But let me ask you this. If your competence comes from your ability to be the hardest worker in the gym, put the most amount of muscle on, you're the most shredded, you're a specimen in that physical arena. What happens the moment that you lose that ability, even if it's just for a few months? What happens to you in those few months where you can no longer be in the gym and showing that aspect of yourself? Well, for me, in my perspective, I would say your confidence is gone, right? Your sense of adequacy is gone. And we see this with even a lot of athletes at the very highest levels, the tippy tops of the Mount Rushmores, etc., where they are the greatest in their space, in their field, right? They are exceptional in their sport, in their trade, in their craft, whatever you want to call it. However, soon as they get out of the league, soon as they get out of their respected profession, depression hits, right? They become a completely different person. And I've gotten to see this face front, thankfully, due to my circle, or the individuals that I've at least had the privilege of working with and working under and working, in the same spaces as. They have brought me into company of, these ex-NFL players, the Hall of Famers, this and that. And I've gotten to see these guys 20 years after their Hall of Fame careers, and to see some of them in just spaces of depravity. Like, they're gone. Their sense of self, their sense of confidence no longer exists. They're now the same person cowering away in a corner somewhere. Now, of course, a lot of that may have to do with, mental injury, CTE, etc., but we're not going to get into that right now. My point is, when you have this baseline, this foundation of my competence is my confidence, whatever your competence is in, as soon as that thing is gone or is no longer represented, then your confidence is gone. Again, when you're in a social interaction, you can't be dunking a basketball at that moment. Sure, you might have an image or a brand in the person's mind that will have them admire you, but if you don't have a personality, or you don't believe that you're worthy of, a relationship or being loved outside of what you do, then it will fall apart, and you will trade that in for this false sense of self. You will create a persona for yourself in order just to have regular conversations, and they end up not being so regular because you're putting on a mask, you're putting on an act, you're putting on this facade, needing to be somebody that you're not in order to be acceptable to whatever audience that you're engaged with. So you also find, by the way, that like, let's say spaces like LA or Hollywood, right? The reason why, let's say you have more of these personality types is because they attract. The people who are trying to be superior and seen, but have this deep sense of inadequacy, will attract into the same spaces. They will find each other. That's why you have two people come into relationships all the time. One is openly inadequate, and the other has this sense of bravado, right? Might be a over narcissist, etc. But it's the same energy. It's the same exact energy dynamic. They're both highly insecure, both afraid of the world, both afraid of being out of control in essence. And so they are a perfect match for one another. And so again, when we're making a transition in a true space of confidence, we have to understand that in order for us to make that leap, in order for us to make that jump, we have to realize that this mask or facade is not it, right? Because I'm now got a little bit of muscle on me, because I now got a little bit of accolades, because I just wrote my first book and published my first book. Shameless plug. Make sure to get your copy. Doing me guilt free. But because you find yourself in this place where you're doing things and having things, if that is your basis and your foundation for your confidence, it will shatter. Now, there is a difference in allowing that inner sense of worthiness to then manifest these experiences or things in your life, right? If you have a true sense of self-love, you can't help but take care of your body. You can't help but take care of your finances. You can't help but get into the healthiest relationship dynamics and surround yourself with powerful, empowering people. You just cannot help it. And that's the space that you want to then find yourself in. You really want to cultivate. I'm not even going to say you want to discover them, because you can't find them outside of yourself. And that's been the problem thus far. That's why, again, these individuals who, let's say, buy the Lambo because they don't feel they're enough by themselves, that's why it looks off, right? Now, there are individuals who get the Lambo simply because they love the Lambo, right? But there are also those who will get it because they need people to see them in a certain light. And this is an epidemic at this moment in history, right? Social media, etc. We're all crafting these images for the rest of the world to see us some type of way. That's why for me, I started saying, you know what, like, I'm wearing tank tops like this, or there's a name they used to be called by. I don't like that name, but yeah, I'm wearing a white tank top about half of my videos, right? I got a series of like 10 black shirts, and I just cycled through those 10 black shirts, and I'm like, here it is, here we go. I got nothing to prove to anybody because I know who I am internally. But that took work and it was a process. But again, don't get fooled by this false sense of worthiness or adequacy that is actually inadequacy and true insecurity showing itself as confidence. Don't get fooled by that. Now, before we wrap up, Bingo Bongo. This is my very first published book, Doing Me Guilt Free, breaking free from people pleasing and unleashing your true personal power. Now, this is a book that, I'll be honest with you, just poured out of me. It happened in the span of a few weeks. And after it was done, I looked back at it and I said, okay, yeah, this is the book I needed as a kid. This is the book I needed at 7 years old, right? And 17 and at 27, and I need at 37 and 107. This is a book that truly speaks to the heart and soul of the individual looking to step into a true place of personal power. So if you are out there somewhere, make sure to get your copy by going into the description below. Again, this is going to be one of the best purchases of the year. I guarantee it. I know I'm sounding real cocky right now, but I genuinely mean it. I didn't write it without the purpose and intention of speaking to myself, right? I wrote it for me first, and then I was able to give it to the rest of the world. So make sure to get your copy. But for everybody else, till the next time, peace, love, Arrivas Dirties.